I'd like to welcome everybody to Blue Rain Gallery podcast. Today, we're excited to have with us via Chicago, Chris Pappan. I'm excited to talk about this because Chris is another innovator and really a trailblazer for maybe, what's the best way to say this? Redefining what historic ledger art is in a contemporary way. And so I'd like to first start though, let's go through a little bit of history. Chris, maybe you could tell us where you're born, a little bit about your heritage, and how that's influenced you in your art. We can also cover a few other things like what is a descriptive of historic ledger art and its influence on your contemporary work. So with that, let's turn it over to you a little bit and tell us about your beginnings.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Leroy. So I am a member of the Kaw Nation. We call ourselves Kanza, and that's where Kansas gets its name from. That's the state of Kansas is named after my people. So, but I wasn't born or raised on the Kaw Reservation, which is now in Oklahoma. I actually grew up in Arizona, in Flagstaff, which is right next to the Navajo Reservation. So growing up, that was kind of my my influence of Native American culture. But I didn't really grow up knowing my specific Kanza culture. So fast forward to end of high school, where I had always been drawing and painting. I took extra art classes in high school and won some awards, and ended up going to the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe. And that's where I met some lifelong friends and my life partner, Deborah. And she's actually from Chicago, and that's how I ended up here. But she's Korean and Jemez Pueblo, so she has family connections to New Mexico, and that's why she was at school there also. But during the time in Santa Fe, I was really being able to connect and meet with other Native American artists, and there were some folks who were there that were straight off the reservation, and were really adept at expressing their culture because they were so immersed in it. And there were other natives there who had kind of grown up outside of that, like myself, and were kind of searching for a direction, I guess. But growing up in Arizona in the 70s and 80s, Native art was not there wasn't a lot of focus on like the Fritz Shoulders or the T.C. Cannons in Arizona, anyways. Not that I saw, because I was a kid. So
what kind of art were they encouraging you to do?
Well, they weren't really encouraging me to go in a certain direction, but they weren't really kind of telling me like, oh, if you want commercial success, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. They were just kind of like, you do your own thing and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they're trying to encourage you to find your own voice. Would you say?
Yeah. I think that's what it was. And being that young, I myself didn't really know what my voice was, and I didn't really find it until I started doing the ledger art. I think that's really where I really just took off. And unfortunately, it took a lot longer than I had wanted it to, but that's life sometimes.
So growing up in the cities, your parents are obviously Native. Did they have any influence on you? Like, did they take you to ceremonies or teach you about your culture?
So my parents, my mom was white and my dad is Native, but they split when I was really, really young. So so I didn't really attend a lot of ceremonies. in Oklahoma. You know, if there was anything, it would have been something, you know, pan-Indian, like a powwow and Flagstaff or something like that. But, you know, again, I didn't really feel that much connection to it. And again, it wasn't until I really started doing the ledger art that I really became more connected to my culture and my community. And that's when my community also welcomed me back in as well. So
That's wonderful. Tell us, for our audience who doesn't know, how would you describe traditional ledger art? What's its origination? What was its purpose? Anything you can share with us on that?
So ledger art it's basically a continuation of Plains art styles. But I like to think of it as an artistic revolution as well, because the ledger paper was the introduction of paper to the Plains tribes in the mid 1800s as manifest destiny was happening. And, you know, there's just all this tumultuous change within a lot of native communities in the central part of the US. So, you know, the ledger paper that was used for recording sales of goods and services in the hands of native folks then became a substrate to visually record way of life that had been erased.
I think a good example of that I can remember is the battle with Custer up there, because you saw a lot of ledger paintings depicting the battle, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what you're saying. They're recording their daily lives now in different ways. I think probably before that, was it buffalo skins and things of that nature that they were
exactly
using?
Yeah.
Did you start looking at traditional ledger art, or were you already familiar with it? Or how did this come, the transition of your work, taking a historic point of view into a contemporary?
So kind of going back a little bit, after I moved to Chicago, I went to the School of the Art Institute for a little bit and became an art school dropout. And, you know, and then I started to try to find my voice of what I wanted to do with my artwork. And then, you know, during my time in Santa Fe, I was trying to stay away from Native art. But then after coming to Chicago, I realized that, you know, this is an important part of who I am and who my family is. So I'm going to start making Native art, but I don't know how I'm going to do that. And around that time, I was introduced to Juxtapose magazine. Mm-hmm. And looking at that art in that magazine and just loving the art and artists, I thought, you know, it would be interesting if I could kind of incorporate that lowbrow pop surrealist style into Native culture, and, you know, how would that work and what would that look like? And then I saw the artwork of Douglas Miles, who was doing exactly that, and you know, I was like, okay, this is the right direction to go, because, you know, this is who I am and this is also who I am. You know, marrying these two things together. So I started calling my work Native American lowbrow, and then I came across some contemporary ledger paper, and I'm used ledger book at my day job, and learning about ledger art at Institute of American Indian Arts in art history classes, I kind of thought, oh wow, this would be a great way to kind of marry a tradition and, you know, the way I like to draw in a contemporary way. And so yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then it took off from there. I started doing the art markets. I think the first one I did was the Herd India Market, and then I did the Idle York India Market, and then the Santa Fe India Market, and then, you know, then that's when I was welcomed also into a ledger artist community, because there were a few artists back then. You know, there weren't as many as you see today, but back then there was just, you know, a handful of them, and they were like, oh wow, that's really interesting, and, you know, I felt welcomed by them and, you know, encouraged, and so I just, you know.
Seems like a lot of your contemporaries ledger art is still based more on the traditional point of views, where you've become a trendsetter in contemporizing everything. And it's really cool. And I want to talk about a little bit about this. There's a few things that has happened in your life in the last few years that I want you to talk about. One of them you know a lot about, the other you may not know so much, but it's just as important. But tell me about your experience and your exhibit at the Field Museum in Chicago, because most people don't get an opportunity like you had.
The exhibit at the Field Museum, that became an intervention in a Native History Museum that has displayed Native American culture in a very one-sided way through a very Eurocentric anthropological lens. And, that museum has been very complicit in portraying Native people as, as vanished, as, that our culture doesn't exist anymore, and these are the remnants of it. So I got that opportunity through my wife, Deborah, who was working for an education program at the time, and she had met the curator there, and the curator was interested in, kind of reintroducing contemporary Native culture to to the museum, in general. So that's kind of how it all started, and then it just kind of blew up.
Can you describe how your work was integrated with and around what? And I know I could say what it was, but I'd like your perspective on what they did with your work.
Part of it was, building up actual walls around old display cases and hanging my art. But then there's other ways that my art could engage with the work, the historical works that were in the cases. And that kind of came out of necessity, because my original idea was to put work inside of the cases, but due to old museum practices and things, those old display cases are basically hazmat situations, because everything was treated with arsenic and as a pesticide. So I couldn't put my artwork inside the case, so I ended up putting my artwork on the glass in front of the case. So then it became all these different layers of history from the past to the present, and people had to actually face a contemporary drawing of Native folks to look around and see the artifact.
Yeah, the historic vesture.
Yeah.
That was so beautiful what they did, integrating the banners throughout and the posters. It really did exactly what you're talking about, Chris, and that is, Native people are still alive and they still have their culture, and it's not something to be dusted off. It's living and continuing in a beautiful way.
Exactly.
So the second one I want to talk to you about is last year we sold, or the TIA collection, I should say, acquired 4 major paintings. They've also acquired a few others in the past. And the TIA collection, I don't know if you know this, but they loan their work throughout the world, through all the museums. And that's a big deal for you as well. And the imagery that they chose in this last selection was very powerful, and it had to do with the Boy Scouts and the imitation of Native regalia and dance. Can you explain more about that, about those 4 pieces?
Yeah, those were created through my time in an artist residency here in Chicago as well. So I had a lot of great input, lots of critical dialogue around those pieces, and just was really able to focus on them. So I was really proud of that series. But it came out of the idea that I just had for a long time of this misappropriation of Native American culture, and the Boy Scouts being one of those institutions that just is kind of unforgiving about that. And part of it is due to their complicated history, in that there was a Dakota man by the name of Charles Eastman who helped kind of form the Boy Scout way of doing things. he went in there and he wanted to teach kids, the real Native way of life, and he wasn't able to do that for whatever reason. So he just kind of was like, I'm not going to work with these guys anymore. So, but I think the Boy Scouts kind of took his participation in that and just, ran with it. And so, I don't think people really understand that history, or, just how damaging and irritating it is for Native people. So, and, especially here in the Midwest, I see that a lot. There's lots of, Boy Scout troops, and, they like to name themselves, their little troops, after nations. And it's just, like I said, they're unapologetic about it, because when Native people come to them and be like, this is offensive and I don't really think what you're doing is appropriate, there's like, well, too bad.
Well, you really did a great job in capturing those paintings. And like I say, those are going to travel the United States and probably the world in the end. Chris, that was a really major acquisition for them. Something else, do you consider yourself as part of a new movement of Native artists?
Yeah, I guess so. I like to I like to think so. I mean, there's the Native futurist movement, which is happening. And, sometimes I like to think that my work could fit in with that movement. Thinking about taking something as traditional or something meaningful from the past and reforming it now in the future so that it's still or reforming it here in the present so that it's still relevant for the future. And so that's where the futurist movement is thinking about, time in a non-linear way, and, the seventh generation idea, and how what we do today affects, our
I've been
descendants.
I've been in this business for 30 years, and I'm seeing a generational shift, in which you're part of, and that's why I asked the question. And I own three works of yours, but they're not just with you; they're with Breeze Marcus, and they're very powerful. Stand up and show that. It's yeah. Here you guys go. This is from Breeze. He's one of my favorite people as well, and he has the same probably thoughts of struggle as you do. But it's nice that you guys have found a way to collaborate. But I see your work, I see his work, I see Star Hardridge and many others. This is a whole new generation coming in, and I think by the end it'll be very, very powerful. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is I noticed you were holding a coffee mug before. What was that?
This is the wonderful coffee mug that you guys are making. I wanted to get some of those products because I wanted to, see the quality of them. And, this mug is so awesome.
It's fantastic.
It keeps everything so hot, and like you don't even feel the heat on the outside. It's, they're great. So. Yeah,
no, they're great. What do you think of the idea we had as far as utilizing imagery on products like that?
It's great. I was hoping that I could get involved with something like that at some point in my career. It's the way that you're doing it it's really helpful. And
well, we're hoping that it'll help artists who are climbing the ladder like yourself with it. It's not huge profit margins, but every little bit helps so that we can keep you painting. And that's
and just one thing real quick too. What I like about it is that it's affordable, so that more people can be able to acquire something with my work on it. Because
yeah, the other thing, Chris, that we have noticed is that there is crossover between both of our platforms, the BlueRain.com, BlueRainGallery.com, and BlueRainPrintShop.com. We've had a lot more inquiries in your work derivative of the print shop into BlueRainGallery.com, and that's an interesting note. But it all comes together. It's actually a good concept. Can you talk a little bit about the upcoming show and what you have planned for us here at Blue Rain Gallery?
Yeah. So, every time I have a show with you guys, I always try to, throw in something different into the mix, but then I also try to, keep the stuff that folks like. So, so there's always something new that you'll see from me. So, um, one piece I have is actually drawing on wood. So, it's just kind of see how that's going to go. Playing with um, the element of fire again, but this time kind of really going crazy with it. So um, see some of that, and then also I'm doing a couple of pieces where I'm kind of pulling back and just really enjoying the medium of graphite and just trying to do just some a couple of really beautiful just straight drawing.
Oh, nice.
So
Well, we're looking forward to your visit, or are you coming down to Santa Fe for that?
no,
Okay.
I won't
Well,
be.
we're looking forward to your work, especially. But wait, I'm grateful that you took time today to do a podcast with us, Chris. I'd like to encourage everybody to visit our website, blueraingallery.com, and view Chris's new work. It'll be here in a few weeks. His opening is on February 26th. Our doors here at Blue Rain are open, even though there's not a lot of tourism in our state. For those who are around and want to come, we have a huge edifice that's 10,000 square feet, and we do practice social distancing and masks. So it is a fairly safe environment. I would like to encourage everybody to subscribe to our podcast through Apple Podcasts or through Spotify or YouTube. It'd be wonderful if you could subscribe. Also, if you want to view some more of Chris's work on the print shop, go to bluerainprintshop.com and get some of those mugs. They are actually exactly how Chris said. They will keep your stuff hot and cold too. So thank you again. And until next time, nice talking to you, Chris.
Likewise, Leroy. Thank you.
Hey,